And so at what point under Fourth Amendment law is a police officer allowed to make a mistake? When we're talking about searching you, invading your rights, invading your privacy, seizing you, you know, questioning you, those kinds of things. And so typically under the Fourth Amendment and under a lot of other constitutional provisions, the police officers just have to be, the conduct has to be reasonable. Well, that's a pretty vague, broad, ambiguous term, I think, in some regard. What's reasonable to some people is not reasonable to others, but that's what we have trusted, basically, our judges to make determinations of. Was the police officer's conduct reasonable? And to some degree, I've got to agree with this fact. You know, you can't expect police officers to be perfect.
So what makes reasonable? The majority rule?
The judge's decision. Okay, and then over time, we've developed case law telling us, you know, when I say case law, I mean the United States Supreme Court has looked at a set of facts in a case and said, in these set of facts, a police officer cannot act this way. Right? In this set of facts, it was completely permissible for the police officer to act as the way he did. And so those are the things that we rely upon when we're talking about or trying to interpret the conduct in the case to determine the reasonableness of the parties that were involved. And so there's a lot of legal definitions I don't want to get into, but this started with you asking me, hey, what are the requirements of my clients? I mean, your customers that come and get the license to carry. Mm-hmm. You know, can you explain the requirements if they get stopped? And so we know that the license to carry provisions, okay, in the 411 of the government code, right, it's going to require you, right, to display your license to carry, right, on demand of a police officer. And we talk about, and I'm not going to get into it again today, but we have done this subject one other time on the show, and I really went into the cool, what I thought was cool. You guys told me that was way too deep, and people didn't really understand, so I'm not going to do it again, but I think it's a really cool topic to talk about how it has no teeth. There's really no criminal provision saying that, you know, if you don't display it right upon being stopped or...
We talked about this. They changed that. Before there was teeth. Now they've said...
They took it away. They took the teeth away, right? But I talked about how you could still possibly get in trouble. You could get arrested anyway and then have to fight it later, okay? And so just do this. Instead of going into all that again... And two, you're going to make yourself look suspicious. If the police you get stopped, you need to tell them right away, even if you don't have a weapon on you.
That's right. I teach that in my class. I'm so adamant on that. There's a section on there that says to do it one way. I said, no, you do it my way, and you'll be all right, just like Ross is saying. Right?
So instead of going into all of that, even though it's a cool topic and it's really neat from a legal perspective and the possible consequences, and there's great arguments for a lawyer to think about in theory, okay, in everyday life, you're going to get yourself costing yourself a lot of money potentially if you don't just do what I'm about to tell you. When you get stopped, just show the police officer your license to carry and tell them your license to carry, even if you don't have the weapon, because they can tell on their in-car computer, right? Your license is going to pop up as soon as they pull your information. And so they're going to know you have your LTC. And so if they go to your car and you're not telling them this, they're going to start to think, even if they're not telling you already, even if they don't express it, you know, to you, they're thinking in the back of your mind, right, this guy's got a weapon. This guy's got a weapon. Why isn't he telling me he's LTC? What's going on here? And so you're just better off to make the environment more friendly and conducive to getting out of your ticket. That's right. If you just go ahead and tell the police officer, hey, man.
What's the objective of a traffic stop?
And so that's what I'm saying. To get out of the traffic stop. That's exactly right. Right. And so to not have to call my office, right. You know, 15 minutes later the next morning.
I like your house, man, but I ain't going to pay for it, okay?
So look, so that is the easiest thing to do. And we talked about how licensed to carry members are usually respectable, upstanding members. You might even gain yourself a little bit of favor with the police officer by letting them know up front, hey, I'm an LTC guy, you know. Now, if you're a lawyer, that's not probably a good move. But if you're just LTC, go ahead, tell them that. Say, hey, man. And we spoke about what if you forget your license and your weapons in the car. Well, this is where we get into the questioning issue. And you don't have to incriminate yourself at all. And so Matt said, well, what kinds of questions, right, do you have to answer or not have to answer?
Wait. Let's clarify. You said something that's a little confusing. This is a person who doesn't have a license as compared to a person
No,
who
this is a person who has their LTC but forgot their license at the house.
Okay, because then there's the third stage where you don't have a license, and we'll go over that in a minute.
Right. And so if you don't have a license at all, I'll just cover that right now, you're allowed to have your weapon.
Right. I want to go in that a little bit more depth, though. Go to the other scenario where he forgets his license.
And so if you forget your license and you have your weapon in your car, again, you're allowed to carry your weapon, period. Right? Even if you don't have your license. Does it make sense?
Oh, I heard what you said. I'm just going through my logs in my brain and what I teach, and there pops up a question mark. So I'll ask you that later.
Okay, and so if you've got it and you think you're incriminating yourself, that's fine, but the weapon's got to be concealed. Okay, so I would think this is why they probably took the teeth out, is because if you get stopped and maybe you forgot your wallet at the house, mm-hmm. and you always carry your 9mm, right, in your lower console. Okay, and so if you get stopped and you go, oh man, I forgot my wallet, and he just stopped you, right, you're going to have a problem, one, because you don't have your driver's license on you. Right. You probably don't have your insurance card, right, unless you got your cell phone and it's an electronic version, okay? And by the way, on that, just a side tip, a lot of people don't know, not all of them, but almost all insurance companies now are going to show up on the state system. So as soon as they pull your car, right, they can pull up your insurance information. Now, they sometimes have to look for that info, okay? And so if you get stopped and you've been like me before and you go, oh, crap, my new one is not saved on my phone. I just got it yesterday. I forgot to take a picture. This happened to me. Okay, I just tell the officer, hey, man, Farm Bureau's on the state system, right? Just go look it up. I'm covered. Okay, that'll probably get you out. Don't say, hey, I don't have my insurance information. No, at least try and tell him, hey, man, would you please go look on the? That's a good would you please go look on the state system, because my insurance should be on there and it should be.
Is driver's license, insurance card, and LTC acceptable to be shown if it's a picture on the phone?
I would have my LTC license for sure.
I know, but let's say you forgot your wallet, but you had it on your phone just in case, and you're in this situation, and an officer pulls you over. Would that be an acceptable form?
I would say, just off the top of my head, that's a good question actually. But I would say off the top of my head, the insurance it is. It's fine to have an electronic copy of your insurance.
That's why I asked about the driver's license.
Okay, your driver's license and LTC, I would probably say that would be a smart thing to do. Okay, because if you did forget it, say, hey man, I forgot, but I hold on a second, I got the pictures on my phone, let me show you. Okay, and I think
do that. I just thought of that, and I'm thinking that's a great idea.
I think a lot of police officers would be okay with that, but I don't speak for them, but I think they would, right, in something that was a good faith looking situation.
Right.
Okay, but I don't know legally. I don't know legally the consequences of that. I would say that, so because I don't know, I'm going to stick with, I think you guys are going to need to keep your cards on you. But if you don't, I do think it's a good idea maybe to take a picture, right, on your phone. But if you didn't do that and you forgot it, right, remember, you still get a right as a regular person, even without a license, to carry a concealed handgun in the car while you're traveling. Okay? I mean, when I say traveling, I mean in a car, okay? To and from your car. And so as long as that thing would be concealed, I would think that you would be okay, even though it says if you're a license holder, you've got to display your license to the police officer, okay? I still think that I think relegated is the term that I'm looking for, to a regular citizen at that point that can carry it, right, in the lower console.
See, that's the part I'm hesitating on, and I don't have it with me to show where my confusion is coming from.
No, there is a confusion there. We talked about this, but it's so confusing that there's really no good way to explain it other than you better have your license. Okay, you better make sure you keep your license. I'd keep my license with my gun. Okay, that way I never run into this issue. Okay, but I would say you still have this right. But as far as you asked me, and even Randy Dixon that day that we spoke about this, do you have to incriminate yourself about it? No, you absolutely don't have to. That's why we have the Fifth Amendment, right?
And this is going to start to segue into a question I asked you before, and that was, are there some things that an officer can ask you? They're not allowed to command you, but they sure can ask you in a way that makes you think, I better do this. Is this where we're going right now?
Absolutely. So, and this is the environment that really, because my initial love and passion for the law started off from the criminal process, criminal procedure. Okay, and this is where I want to be a lawyer. This is what I want to do. First Amendment rights, Fourth Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, Fifth, Sixth, all of this stuff was just my original passion. Now it's changed. I still do some criminal cases, but I want to try to protect people in other ways through estate planning, business planning, family law, counseling, things like that. But this is where constitutional rights collide. And we talked about how they're intertwined, but this is where they all come together, boom, in a one huge explosion. Because now we have a situation where a police officer has seized you and he's trying to search. That implicates the Fourth Amendment. Then we have a situation where, it's an incriminating, sort of area. It may not be, necessarily custodial, meaning you're under arrest, so to speak, but you're definitely seized, right? And there's a possibility to incriminate yourself, so the Fifth Amendment applies. Well, if the Fifth Amendment may apply, okay, Fifth Amendment doesn't apply till you are under arrest, but I'm talking about when they're gonna ask you questions, okay, while you're in custody, that comes into play. Once the Fifth Amendment comes into play, your Sixth Amendment rights come into play. Okay, which is the right to counsel. Okay, and so when we have all these, and you got to be under custody. I don't know why I said you don't. Okay, this is what I'm saying. We make mistakes, right? And like you said, when you're live, you say things you don't really mean to come out that way. But what we're looking for here is custodial interrogation. Okay, and it's exactly like what it sounds. You're in custody, and you're being interrogated. Now, interrogated is typically going to mean that, hey, you're trying to find evidence, right? So it's interrogation, or what we call the functional equivalent, meaning it may not be, and there's a good case on this, Rhode Island versus Ennis, Brewer versus Williams. I talked about this to a jury, very, very strong story. 1968, kind of a mentally retarded individual basically kidnaps a 10-year-old girl, Pamela Powers, very sad story, kidnaps her, kills her, okay, puts her in a bag, puts her in the back of his trunk, takes her and buries her somewhere where nobody knows where she is. Okay, and her parents they're at this event at a YMCA and they can't find her, and you can only imagine what that parent was going through. And right off the bat, like, I don't have kids, but you just want to say, we just need to destroy this individual. Remove him from the face of the earth. It's disgusting what he did. Right? Just disgusting. Absolutely. Right? Just, this person doesn't deserve to live among us. Okay? Some people are probably thinking themselves. All right? And that's fine. That's a natural feelings to have. Right? But here's what happens. Right? He's not mentally all there. He's not necessarily insane. Probably can't have the insanity defense, but he's not mentally like we are. Okay? And so he realizes what he's done. He goes to a lawyer. He turns himself in. The lawyers are there, and they make it very clear they want to have this person evaluated before any questioning happens. And the lawyers make clear they get a promise from the district attorney. If he turns himself in, we will not question. They get a promise from the police chief. If he turns himself in, we will not question him. They get a promise from the transporting officers. If he turns himself in, we will not question him. They get to the station house. He turns himself in. He's going to be transported across state lines. The transporting officers, everybody on each side on the government promises, absolutely gives their word that they will not question him at all. Okay, and so they give their word on this, and his lawyers instructed them. I'm his lawyer. You are not to talk to him. He's not even in a state where he can probably understand such questioning. But whatever it is, you are not to talk. And they guaranteed these lawyers and him that they would not talk to him, because it would not have been a fair situation. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so then they start to transport him, and we get what's famous in law school, right? It's called the Christian burial speech. Okay, and the police officer starts to say, it's raining out here, and they call the suspect, the defendant, Reverend, because he's got a deep religious kind of issue. He really has a strong religious beliefs, which kind of goes into his mental instability. And so the police officer really plays on that and says, Reverend, it's raining out here, it's sleeting, and it's about to come a blizzard. and you know this little girl and her family, they're really entitled, right, to a Christian burial. And if we don't find this girl, we will never be able to give them that Christian burial, Reverend. Reverend, it's so important that we, let her spirit go to God. And this is, and so he really starts to play, right? And he says, you would really do good, Reverend, by telling us where this body is. You would really do good and tell us how this happened. It would really be good for you to really, and so is that questioning?
Nope. That is not a questioning at all. That's what I was talking about. The guy, he's playing this. I have no problem with what he did, okay, because you want to find the child. But when we go back to what we're discussing here, he did not question. He just talked, and all of a sudden this guy's going to probably spill his guts. Is probably what you're going to tell me.
The court found that was the functional equivalent of interrogation, okay? And I agree with the court. I think that the police officer knew exactly what he was doing, right? I commend the police officers in this case, right? Because they didn't lie. The police officer went right in there, and that lawyer filed a motion to suppress and get the case dismissed. Police officers went in there, told the truth about what they did. They said, yeah, this is what we did. We coerced him. We got him. It wasn't coercive maybe under the 14th Amendment, but it was coercive in the fact that they were trying to elicit an incriminating response from him. Okay? And so that was their whole point of that Christian burial speech, was to get incriminating evidence that they could use against him, okay, from his speech. Okay? And so
doesn't that kind of go to what you said a second ago, whereas it may be reasonable in this case, but not reasonable in this case. And here you almost want to turn your head, because it's like we were able to find this child because this person did what they did to her. But in a normal case, in a traffic stop, and you just want to see if there's anything in there and do some snooping.
Well, I'm going to go back to the Fourth Amendment here in a second. So these are absolutes. So you have the absolute right, okay, to not testify against yourself, basically not incriminate yourself, okay? And so these officers, this was not a reasonable, don't you agree? When you promise, you make guarantee promise after promise that you're not going to do something, right? And it was for the benefit of everybody that this gentleman turned himself in, right? It was for the benefit of everybody that he turned himself in, the whole justice system, okay, that they actually realized what happened to the girl. I realized that it was important to find her, but they already knew she was dead. Okay, they already knew this, and they made these promises that, hey, we're not going to do this, and yet they turned around and violated those promises. Okay, and I don't think that that's okay either. And I actually agree with the court's opinion here, and this is what I talked to the jury about in one of my cases, and it was we had differing opinions on both sides, but I think at the end, I think it's Justice Sutherland, but I may have that name wrong, but there was a very powerful, right, opinion, and there was dissents just saying, this is absurd. How can we support this kind of behavior? How can we get this guy off? How you have no moral responsibility as a judge to let this guy, this you know what, off the hook on they call it a technicality, and this is so ridiculous. You are just this is blasphemy of our justice system. And the justice responded that nothing that we do today can bring that little girl back. Nothing that we do today can bring that little girl back. But what we write today and the decisions that we make as a court, right, have implications that are far-reaching, generation upon generation from now. Okay? And yes, I understand that it's hard for some people to accept it on this case.
No, when you say it like that, because I am who I am, I understand both sides. I get it. And I would have to favor the law because it's right. Down the road, it's going to affect tons of people. It's just very difficult when it's just one of these, when you give this story of this guy and this girl, you just think, just get her home, How much is it going to hurt? But I understand where you're coming from, what the judge says on that. It's a very twisted, it's a mind-twisting, mind-bending thought process of which way to go.
And so just to shed some light on the story, it ended up in a good result because simultaneously and unbeknownst to the officers that were in the car, unbeknownst to the other district attorneys, right, there was a separate movement of police officers who were in a separate investigation, right, and they had questioned another witness, right, who was able to, or they found some other evidence. I don't remember exactly how this turned out, but they found independent evidence. They either were talked to another witness or they found something else that told them where the little girl was. Okay, and so in the case that I just told you about, it got dismissed and thrown out for violation of the basically the Sixth Amendment, right, which violated the Fourth Amendment. They couldn't use it as part of a what we call fruit of the poisonous tree. They gained this information, right, illegally, and so anything that they gained from it, which was a little girl's body, which was the incriminating evidence, okay, and his statements, right, those got thrown out because it was all gathered illegally. It was all poisonous.
But on this side, they gathered it.
But they gathered it legally through this other investigation, and they ended up finding, they would have found the body anyway, because they were on there. It was crazy because there was two teams, right, that were totally separate, working completely on separate evidence that were headed to the exact same location.
That's a godsend right there. See?
Okay, and so they ended up coming back and retrying him, and he gets found guilty. Okay, and so see, the system worked, right? The system worked in this case. There was no reason for the judges to make this exception, because if they would have done so, it would have been unnecessary, right? It would have been unnecessary because there was already a legal investigation to begin with.
Look at his passion.
Okay, and so this is just one of those things where, thank goodness, these judges had the guts, okay, the gumption to stick to their guns on what the law is, right? Because there was no need to make a new exception, okay, or find that the rights of the Fourth and Fifth and Sixth Amendments were lesser than they really were, because they didn't need to, and it ended up working out correctly anyway.
Okay.
And so in a Fourth Amendment situation, when you're not under custody, the Fifth Amendment does not come into play.
Okay,
and so if you're,
I want to precursor here because we're running out of time, and I want to make sure we get this through. This is a great discussion and explanation and illustration of what we're trying to get across, but I'd like you to bring it down to a very simple level, if you could, in a couple minutes, explain on a traffic stop how if an officer is trying to get a scoop on you to see if you got anything in the car, he may say certain things, like that the officer in the front seat kind of baiting the guy to say something.
Exactly.
How could this possibly happen with a person in a traffic stop that hears something from a cop and all of a sudden gets himself in trouble for no reason?
That's why I gave Brewer versus Williams first.
Yes, I know.
Okay, and so, but if you're not under custody, you don't have the Fifth and Sixth Amendment issues. You're only stuck with the Fourth Amendment. And so that means they can ask you questions. They can ask you questions, and even possibly incriminating questions, right? And they don't have to give you a Miranda warning, say you have the right to remain silent, because the Fifth Amendment doesn't apply yet. You're not actually under custody. You're just detained temporarily, right, for them to do a routine traffic stop. And so what a routine traffic stop means is I'm going to check your license, check your registration, check your insurance information, maybe ask you some what's supposed to be very brief, right, routine questions. And what I would say is, where you coming from, where you going, right, what's your name, do you have your license and stuff like that. Okay. Anything more than that, in my opinion, and I'm going to argue, okay, in court, if you go outside those parameters.
Well, I mean, you got visual and you got smell. If you see something in the
Obviously.
seat, okay, that's probable cause right there. You smell some weed being smoked.
If you smell marijuana, that's probable cause. But notice, you're not actually under custody just because the police officer has probable cause. Just because a police officer smells marijuana, that smell right there gives him probable cause to search. That does not mean he's actually placed you under arrest. So keep this in mind, right? The Fifth Amendment's not applying because he hasn't placed you under arrest. And that's what a smart police officer do is know there's probable cause. Remember, we talked about this, and then ask you for consent to search. Okay, he'll say, and then you'll say, you got anything illegal in the car? And you'll say no. And he says, okay, then I'm authorized to search then, right? No. That's what he'll do.
Hell no.
And everybody looks at that like, oh, he's telling me that he's got the right to search. Yeah. So, I guess. Yeah. And so a lot of people say, yeah, thinking that he's telling them they...
At what point do you have to get out of the car? When he says, get out of the car and come in?
Yes, legally, there's been 2 cases on that with the Supreme Court. They can make you get out of the car. Right? And the whole point is officer safety. If they're trying to stand, right, on the driver's side, right, while incoming traffic's coming, right, that's unsafe for them. And it's even unsafe standing behind the car, right, based on statistical evidence. So the Supreme Court says, look, If a police officer wants you guys to get out of the car, he can make you get out of the
So,
car.
as an easy example would be, sir, I'm on the road here. Would you please get out of the car? Let's take it over there. Blah, blah, blah. That would be
Yes.
a normal thing.
Yes.
I'm talking about get out of the car now. What are you doing that's forcing him to tell you to get the heck out of the car?
Obviously, like we talked about, don't get upset because, you know, you're going to have a video of this probably, and the police officer's going to look like a you-know-what, right? Let him look like he's being dominating, okay? He's being aggressive for no reason, all right? That's only going to help you. We won traffic tickets. My client was obviously speeding, right? But the jury did not like how the police officer treated the person driving. And the jury knew the only reason this person is having a trial on a speeding ticket is because the officer was a complete you-know-what.
And I want to make something clear. I'm totally for law enforcement. Don't misunderstand.
Oh, I am too.
I'm just saying there's a lot of people who don't understand it, and I know the little games that are played, and I want to make sure that unnecessary games and rules are being put into play here to somebody who doesn't need to.
And so this is what I find. This is what I find that's worrying to me is I've had a couple of these cases that I gotten thrown out. Almost, I'm not saying never, but almost or most. How about this? Almost like a large majority of why questions, in my opinion, is unreasonable. Why? Because I want to. Why else? I don't have to tell you why I'm doing something. Why am I going to Florida? Why am I going to Oklahoma to see my investor? Because I want to.
Okay, let me real quick. We're out of time.
You know, like
an officer pulls you over and says, "Do you have any guns in the car?" I'm not licensed. Do you have any guns in the car? Can you say no?
or you're not licensed.
I'm not licensed.
I guess you could say no if you wanted to.
Because if somebody comes up to my house and says, "You got any guns?" I could say.
But you can have guns, right, in your car if you're not licensed.
Yeah,
It's just got to be
just
concealed.
Concealed.
So if it's concealed, why not
but-
just tell him?
Well, that's the person's prerogative. Because when you're licensed, you must state it. But when you're not, you don't have to state it. It's like your house. If an officer comes to your house, do you have to tell him what you got in your house? No.
And that's what we're saying. If you don't have your license on you, right, you must state it, but you don't have your license, so what do? And that's what Dixon was saying. Even Dixon, I'm going back to him because he's the police officer. Even Dixon said, you don't have to incriminate yourself. You don't have to incriminate yourself.
Look, I got a license, and I'm going to tell an officer whether I got it on me or not. But if I didn't have a license on me, and I'm getting pulled over, and it's a calm stop, I'm not giving anything up.
I don't think this is a so big of an issue, but I'll tell you this. If you've got marijuana in the console and he's not telling you like he smells marijuana, please don't tell him to search. If you've got an open container in the door side, don't tell him to search. If you've got pills that you don't have a prescription for in the bottom console or in the glove box, don't tell him to search. I don't understand why you think that you telling him to search it's going to make me look like a good guy. He won't
Common
be
sense
suspicious.
is not that common.
Like, okay, so just know you have a right, and know this too. I will say this before I go. You have a right to revoke your consent at any time. People don't know that either.
Clarify, please, sir.
Okay, revoke means take away. All right, so if you said, yeah, you can search, and then he starts like going in your glove box, going in your bag, so like that, and like you're like, dude, I'm not gonna be here all day. Like, hey man, I let you search. I don't want you to search anymore. I hereby revoke my consent for you to search my vehicle.
Now, what's going to go on in that officer's head?
I don't know, but if he continues, you're gonna get that case thrown out.
Interesting.
So when he starts searching, and then he gets to the bottom glove box, okay, and you think, oh, I can't remember, did Grandma leave her pills in there when I picked them up for her? I don't remember what I did. Hey, Mr. Officer, I hereby revoke my consent. I no longer give you permission to search my vehicle. Now, he can probably use that one fact, right, as a suspicious circumstance to say that, to develop his probable cause, but if he's got nothing else, that is not enough. And he's going to say, you're nervous. Those two things, being nervous and that in and of itself too, is not going to be enough.
See, this is what the average person out there wants to know, because they're wondering, what do I do in certain situations? So, in things like this that we're talking about is great information.
And I think the pills thing is so, because you could go get somebody else's pills for them, go pick it up for them, right, and have their prescription on it, and you're in possession, right? You could be charged for that. People don't know that either. I've tried that case.
It's just like everything on this planet.
As associate attorney,
It's just like
secretary.
everything on this planet wants to eat you. All the laws want to convict you.
Yeah, that law right there is like they need to do something about that.
All right, look, time's up. tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
Again,
Response by
thank
comment.
you guys for calling me out. Right, I had a little difficult time the last 2 weeks. Been very busy. I appreciate you guys. Keep emailing me at benton@watson.legal. That's BENTON @watson.legal, or come see me at my office, 105 East Main Street
sure?
here in Cameron. Yeah. Or make an appointment if you're in Houston or College Station. You can call the office at 254-605-4140. That's 254-605-4140. Rick Dodd. We didn't get to talk about much personal injury today, but thank you, Rick Dodd, and them for having me on and sponsoring the show, having me as a guest. I appreciate you too, Matt. And, look forward to next week.
Likewise, man. We can't do it without the sponsors, and Popular Dog Cred's a big one. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break. We're behind schedule, but we'll get back up in this next half hour. Joel, let's take us out, and when we come back, we're going to have the delicious Janae Goodman going over.
Still with you, Yeoman. Giga Maggies. See ya.
Hurricane Preparedness. See you on the other side. Very good, sir. Awesome.